Hey, come here. I got a secret. Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. I got you. No, I'm playing. Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. So I have the round 1 game, or actually round 6, game 1 of the finals between Wesley So and Magnus Carlsen. It's an epic battle. As you guys know, Wesley So is the random Fisher, the Fisher random world champion. So chess 960. And Magnus Carlsen is a classical world champion. So it's a true clash of world champions. So for all of my people in the Philippines, magandang umaga, kamusta na? Almasal tayo, ingat lagi, mabuhay to you. Masaya kong makita kang muli. Appreciate everybody very much for stopping by and taking a look. Anybody who speaks Norwegian, God Morgan, hello, tack to you. Appreciate you guys very much for coming and looking at my video. If you guys are ready to go, let's go ahead and take a look and see what we have for the game. So we got e4, e5, knight to f3, knight comes to c6. We have bishop to c4, bishop to c5, c3, knight to f6, d4. Pawn takes d4. We got e5, we got d5, bishop to b5, knight to e4, and we have pawn takes d4. So I kind of did it in a reverse order. I did game 3 first, and then I did game 1 now. So you guys that watched my last video, you guys pretty much saw that I did this same exact opening. So this is the Juco piano, and it is the center attack. It's kind of like gambit-y looking, but it doesn't really give up anything. It's pretty, it's definitely sound. So we got bishop back to b6. Knight comes to c3. We see castles by black. Bishop to e3. Bishop to g4. And instead with this one, we actually have queen to c2. We see the bishop backing up to f5. Now, if the bishop did so happen to want to take, you're not really too worried about it, because after bishop takes, you're going to throw in the little intermezzo, bishop takes c6, and after pawn takes c6, you got pawn takes f3. After knight to g5, you have queen to f5, and as you guys can see, you do have an open g-file. So you're going to be castling queenside, and you're going to be getting these rooks rolling, these pawns going, this bishop here. It's slicing every which way to this king. So you are definitely not worried about that. But we do see bishop to f5, so kind of asks a question to the queen. So we see queen coming to b3. We got knight back to e7. We have castles by white. We got c6 by black. Bishop comes to e2, and then we have rook to b8, and this is the novelty of the game. Now, something that the computer really likes to play, and there is a very specific reason why this is played. It's not so obvious because your pawns as black are not pointing in this direction. So it doesn't seem like the most natural move to play, but the move is actually c5. And what this does is it basically threatens to create a pass pawn in 2 separate ways. So regardless of the way white kind of tries to, handle the situation best play, you're going to get a pass pawn, and one is going to kind of be better than the other. So after c5, if white does take on c5, you see knight takes c5, and then queen to b4, and then you got knight to e6. And as you guys can see, you have a very dangerous pass pawn in the center of the board, and it has the support of the bishop and the knight. The other way after c5 to play is queen to a3, but after pawn takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, bishop takes d4, knight to c6. As you guys can see, you have a pass pawn as well. It's a little bit kind of blockaded, but it's still a pass pawn nonetheless. But like I said, we do see rook to b8, which is the novelty of the game. We have knight over to a4. Bishop comes back to c7. We see knight to h4. And we have come to the point in the game where I would like for you to stop the video. I have 2 guess the moves. This is the first one. Actually, no. After knight to h4, it's f6 first, and then the guess the move. So in this position here, see what is a very strong move for Wesley. So we'll get into that, and then we'll see what he played in the actual game. All right, cool. So what was actually played in the game is bishop to f3, and I'll show the idea, the reasoning behind this move in a second. But instead of bishop to f3, it was very strong to actually go f4, and you're preparing to meet pawn takes e5 with pawn takes e5, and as you can see, white has been able to create their own pass pawn. They also have an open rook for their open file for their rook, so they're looking really good. And they really have a hold on this c5 square. So this c5 move doesn't make any sense at all for black now. You can also go rook to c1 and just like extra clamp down. After bishop to f3, we're really hoping to get knight takes here, and then knight takes back, and then bishop takes, and we're taking advantage of the fact that this queen is pinned. But this is actually one tempo too late, because we do see b5 by Magnus Carlsen. So he basically makes that whole idea completely null and void. You know, we're going to be getting attacked here as white. So we're forced to retreat our knight to c3. After the knight takes on c3, we see pawn takes f6. We have bishop to e4. Pawn takes c3. We have queen to d6. You know, like, why not threaten checkmate? The thing about it is, when you're playing your chess games, if you ever have the ability to threaten checkmate, without, you know, of course, getting checkmated yourself on the next move, you know, it really puts your opponent in a position where they have to parry that threat. You know, they're really worried about it. I mean, you don't want to get checkmated. So as you can see, checkmate is set up here on the h2. So you have to do something about that. You can't just let it go and, you know, get checkmated, because that's not what we want. So we got g3, and then we have bishop takes f3. Now, what I want to talk about right now, coming up in this next sequence of moves, is just the sheer craziness of all of these zwish and zug or in between moves that Wesley So throws in the mix. Because naturally, with bishop takes f3, I think a lot of people, probably including myself, would just take knight to f3, which is a very strong reply. But Wesley So says, hey man, you know, that's not fun enough. Let's go ahead and throw a whole bunch of zwish and zug moves in the meantime. So we see bishop to f4. The queen takes on f6. We see bishop takes c7. Rook comes to b7. And then we see bishop down to e5. And then queen to f7. And it is only now that Wesley So takes on f3 with the knight. So he literally threw 3 entire zwish and zug moves in between before he took on f3. So this is like the immortal zwish and zug game from Wesley So right now. So it's kind of crazy. So we got queen taking f3, of course. We have queen to b4. We have knight down to f5. And we have queen to c5. And then we have rook b to f7. Now, this is actually getting kind of dangerous for Wesley So in this position, because you have like literally all of these pieces like trained on the king side. You have the ability for these pawns to start moving. So it actually is starting to go a little bit downhill now. So the rook a comes to e1. So this is definitely the best move from the computer. But then we see h5 by Carlsen. And he is really, really intent on trying to, you know, break open this king side. And as you guys can see, white does not have a light square bishop. So the fact that they have all of these light squares around the king, you know, open, is kind of like it's a disaster. So we do see h3. And this is one of the best ways to try to defend. You know, you definitely cannot go h4, because you're going to see knight takes h4. You're going to see pawn takes h4. The queen is going to come back to f4 with check. And you're going to have bishop coming down to g3. And then you're going to have the really, really nice rook sacrifice on f2. It's not really truly a sacrifice, because if the rook does take back, you got queen taking g3 with check. And you cannot defend this way, even though you kind of have to, because you're going to be dropping the rook, and you're going to come back, and you're going to be, you know, so it's just like you're just going to get all your pieces taken. So you can't do that. So h3 is one of the best ways to try to defend. But we see h4, and then we see queen taking c6. And unfortunately, you're in a position as white that you can't really just go like pawn grabbing. You have to try to like get back and defend. Unfortunately, the movements that Wesley So was making with his queen from here to here and then finally to here, it really kind of put his queen out of the ability to try to defend his king. So now he only has pretty much no pawns in front of his king, and he just kind of has these rooks trying to defend. But as you guys can see, that's just really not enough. So if you guys want to go ahead and stop the video in this position and see the blow that Magnus Carlsen has at his disposal, go ahead and do so real quick. All right, so I kind of feel like I hinted at it a little bit before, because you guys after h4 saw that knight was able to take on h4. So you would be absolutely right if you said knight takes g3. Now, knight takes g3 is a really like somber move to have to try to defend as white. because as you guys know, you are threatening checkmate on h1. So you have to defend that. And unfortunately, you do not have the ability to take with the pawn because you're pretty much going to get checkmated. The queen is going to sacrifice itself and you're going to basically be checkmated because your own pawns are really blocking your escape. So the queen is going to take on f1. The rook is going to take on f1. The rook's going to take on f1 with check. And then after the king goes to g2 or even h2, you're going to be seeing rook 8 to f2 with mate. So that's not happy. So after knight takes on g3, you're forced to take back with the bishop, but it's really not much better because you have pawn taking g3, rook goes to e8, trying to drum up some type of counter attack, but you see g2, and this is a really accurate move because you are in a really horrible position after g2. The rook takes on f8 with check, and then the rook takes on f8, and then it's like, what do you do here? This pawn is not even really something that's on the radar. You're basically going to be winning an entire piece, and you cannot move the rook anywhere because this pawn is going to drop, and you're just going to be promoting with check, and you're going to be just like basically winning the game. So it is in this position that Wesley So unfortunately does resign the game. So I'd like to rewind back though, if we can, to the point after f6 where f4 was possible. I think this would have been a really crazy variation for Wesley So to go into. This looked like really, I mean, to me when I was studying the game, it looked really promising to try to get all of those pluses. Of course, black doesn't have to capture here, but I think that this was something, this was definitely a position, this was a very critical position for So to take the advantage and stuff. But that's how chess games go. You can't win them all. So like I said, going back to the end, we did see rook rook takes f8, and that is the position that he resigned. So that was that game. That was the round 1 game. And so as you guys know, Wesley So 1-1, Magnus Carlsen 1-1, and then they drew 2 games. So they are dead even going into this next round. So we'll see what goes on tomorrow. But I actually had somebody want me to give him a shout out. So I'm not sure if it's Jose or if it's Hoy. I'm not sure how you say the name exactly, but shout out to you, my guy. I appreciate it very much. And I understand, as my YouTube builds, I'm gonna get in a position where I can't really just shout people out because my video is gonna be like 40 minutes long. So I'm gonna have to quit that. But I really do try to, personally respond to every comment that I get, and I'm still able to do so now. But I'm probably gonna have to, as the months go on, kind of pick and choose who I respond to. So I'm definitely gonna be, looking at everybody who's been watching my stuff up to this point and commenting stuff like that. But for all of my people in the Philippines, I'm gonna try to get these good mornings done. See how many I can do. So I have Maanyong Buntag, Mayad na Agahan, Naibag na Bigat, Masento si Akabusan, Marhe na Aga, Buenos Dias, Mapia na Uma. I think I did that out of order. Maanyong Aga. Let me see. Kaipan. Yeah, Kapian Kapanu Dios. And then the new one I got, Mayap Abak. So I appreciate you guys very much. And probably in the next day or two, I'll add another one to the list. Trying to get all of them and everything, because I got a lot of love for my people in the Philippines. I'm where I am right now because of everybody that has supported me to this point, so I appreciate it very much. And if you have any comments, questions, anything you want to say, any suggestions for videos, feel free to let me know in the comments, and I will see y'all next time. All right.